Welcome! This explainer is all about producer behavior and supply. We're going to break down all the key concepts you'll need to master for your exams. By the end, you'll understand exactly why some prices fall while others seem to skyrocket.
Here's our plan. We'll start with the essential terms, then explain the concepts in more detail. After that, we'll get into some critical comparisons and alerts for your multiple-choice questions. Then, we'll practice with some exam-style questions and finish up with a high-yield summary.
So think about this for a second. Why does a new phone get cheaper over time, but a popular concert ticket gets way more expensive? The answer to both questions is rooted in the principles of supply. Understanding how producers behave is the key, so let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. We need to start with the single most important rule that producers live by, the law of supply.
In simple terms, when producers can sell something for a higher price, they will want to sell more of it. I mean, it makes sense, right? A higher price means more potential profit. But also, think about it this way. To produce just one more item, it often costs a little more than the previous one. So producers really need that higher price to make it worthwhile to ramp up production.
And you see this everywhere. If people are willing to pay more for cupcakes, bakeries will start making more cupcakes. If your job offers you a higher wage for overtime, you're probably more willing to work those extra hours. It's all about responding to the incentive of a higher price.
So that's the law. Now, let's look at how economists actually visualize this concept using a really powerful but simple tool.
This is the supply curve, and the first thing you should notice is that it slopes upward, from left to right. That's not an accident. If you follow the line up, you can see that as the price goes higher on the vertical axis, the quantity that producers are willing to supply also gets larger on the horizontal axis. It's the law of supply, just in a picture.
Okay, this next section is incredibly important for your exams. We're going to zero in on the kind of tricky details that show up all the time in multiple choice questions, so you want to pay close attention.
First, we have the change in quantity supplied. The one word you absolutely need to remember here is movement. We're talking about moving from one point to another along the same curve. This only happens when the price of the product itself changes.
Look at this graph. See how we're just moving along that same blue line from point A to point B? The price of apples went up, so producers supplied more apples. That's a change in quantity supplied. It's a movement. Now, compare that to a change in supply. The key word here is shift. This is totally different. The entire curve actually moves to a new spot, either to the left or to the right. This tells us there's been a fundamental change in how much producers are willing to sell at any price.
This kind of shift happens because of some outside factor, not the price of apples. Maybe there was a breakthrough in farming technology. Now farmers can grow more apples more cheaply. So, at every single price point, they're willing to sell more apples than they were before. The whole curve has shifted.
And here is a huge MCQ alert. Exam questions love to test if you know the difference between these two. Just burn this table into your memory. A change in quantity supplied is a movement along the curve caused by price. A change in supply is a shift of the whole curve caused by something else.
So what causes a shift? Well, here are the 7 main factors. A change in any one of these will move the entire supply curve. For instance, if the government puts a new tax on cupcakes, that makes it more costly to produce them. That would decrease supply, which means the whole curve shifts to the left.
So, this is where it all comes together. When we put the supply curve and the demand curve on the same graph, the point where they cross is called market equilibrium. You can think of it as the market's happy place. It's the one price where the amount that producers want to sell is exactly the same as the amount that consumers want to buy.
Now, if the price isn't at that equilibrium point, things get unbalanced. If the price is too high, you get a surplus. Producers are supplying more than consumers are demanding. Goods just sit on the shelves. This forces sellers to lower their prices. On the other hand, if the price is too low, you get a shortage. Everyone wants the product and the shelves are empty. This allows sellers to raise their prices. So you can see the market is always pushing itself back toward that equilibrium point.
Of course, sometimes governments get involved and try to control prices. They can do this in 2 main ways, by setting price floors, which are minimum legal prices, or by setting price ceilings, which are maximum legal prices.
And here is another classic exam trap. This can feel a little backwards, so listen carefully. For a price floor to actually do anything, it has to be set above the natural market price.
And for a price ceiling to have any effect, it has to be set below the market price. You'll definitely want to remember that.
Okay, you've got the theory down. Now it's time to practice. Let's work through a few questions that are very similar to what you could see on your exam.
Okay, first question. A new engine design makes it cheaper to produce cars. What happens to the supply curve for cars? Next, a bad frost damages the orange crop. What does that do to the supply curve for orange juice? Go ahead and pause to think through your answers. For that first question, the right answer is B. It shifts to the right. The new engine is an improvement in technology. That's a non-price factor. Lower costs mean producers can supply more cars at every price, which is a rightward shift. For the second question, the answer is C. It shifts to the left. The frost is a supply shock. With fewer oranges available, less juice can be made at any given price. That's a decrease in supply.
All right, let's try 2 more. Question 3. The government sets an effective price ceiling on milk. What happens? And for question 4, the government adds a new tax on gasoline production. How does that impact the supply of gasoline?
For question 3, the answer is B, a shortage. Remember our alert? An effective ceiling has to be below the equilibrium price. This low price makes lots of people want milk, but producers aren't willing to sell as much. That creates a shortage. For question 4, the correct answer is C. A tax on production increases costs for the producers. This makes it less profitable to sell gasoline, so they supply less at every price, shifting the whole curve to the left.
Okay, we've covered a lot. To wrap things up, let's quickly review the absolute most important takeaways from this module.
This is your final checklist. If you can explain each of these 7 points, especially the difference between a shift and a movement and how price floors and ceilings actually work, then you are in excellent shape for your exam.
Thinking about questions like this helps connect these ideas to the real world. At the end of the day, supply is all about how producers react to changes around them. If you get that, you've got this module. That wraps up our explainer on producer behavior and supply. Good luck with your studies.